Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to the first of two Shitbox Rally wrap-up videos. Today it's the thank yous. I didn't want this to get lost at the back end of another video. It is far too important for that. So I thought I would make a specific upload dedicated to saying thanks for your generosity. Thanks also, by the way, for indulging some slightly different content on the channel. Not entirely watch related, but all very much for a good cause. Now I'm just waiting on some GoPro footage from Mr. X. I'll make the rally wrap-up travelogue style video next week. But here are a couple of teaser pictures to keep you going until then. It was a fantastic experience with some of the most stunning scenery imaginable and next level car-based silliness. That's next week though. Today it's time for me to show you some gratitude. This is how much we managed to raise for cancer research. And I do mean we, you, me and Mr. X. I simply cannot believe that we got close to $30,000. That is a phenomenal figure and honestly double what I thought we would get even an outside maximum. Our target was 10, 15 would have been amazing, but 30 is just incredible. So thank you to all of you who donated, large or small, or just sent a message of support. Now, I did say I would give every single person who donated $50 or more a shout out, and I will. But first, a general thank you to anyone who donated a sum smaller than that, or anyone who donated anonymously. There were lots of anonymous donations, people who didn't want their name mentioned but still wanted to contribute. This thank you is especially for all of you. Next, I need to thank our two major sponsors, Fears Watches of Bristol, England and G-Shock Australia. They both donated watches that we then auctioned off, and 10,000 of the 30,000 came from the auction. So thank you once more to Fears and to G-Shock. Mr. X and I were very proud to have both of those brands on the side of our shitbox. All right, on to the donors. All 24 pages of them. Why don't I start with the two gentlemen who won the auctions? That makes sense. Thank you, Joseph Gagliardi, Mr. G, who bid and won on the MRG. Not only that, but he made an additional donation of $375. Thank you so much, mate. Thank you also to Matthew, who is on Instagram as city_escapement. He has a phenomenal watch collection by the looks of it, and he has just added a piece unique Fears archival to that collection with a very generous bid. I will leave a link to his Instagram in the description of the video if you want to give him a follow. Thank you again, Matthew and Joe. I really hope you enjoy the watches, especially knowing where the money is going. Now, I got notice of a huge $1,200 donation halfway through the rally from Nigel Scannell and the Scannell family. Nigel's mum was the original owner of the Mercedes. She owned it from new and clearly loved it. Nigel and his mum donated the price that we paid for the car, which is just amazing. The car, by the way, was faultless. We love it and we're hoping that we can loan it out to other people who want to do the rally. So the car keeps on making money for cancer research. Thank you so much, Nigel and Nigel's mum. One notice that I missed until today was the $1,000 donation from Island Watch. That is, of course, Mark from longislandwatch.com. I have been running this channel for nearly 7 years now, and I don't think I've come across a nicer human being working in this industry than Mark. And I've never heard anyone with a bad word to say about the man. And this just goes to underscore exactly that. So thank you, Mark. You should all show some appreciation to the man by buying a watch from him. And you will finally be seeing an Islander watch on the channel very soon, I have no doubt. Next up, shout out to none other than Mr. P. Mr. P has been a good friend of mine and Mr. X's for years now, and he made a very generous donation of $700. Now, Mr. P and I embarked on a little joint business venture recently. You'll be hearing a lot more about that on the channel very soon as well. Aussie Stephen Lewis, aka Watch and Cocktail on Instagram, made a huge $500 donation. If that isn't worth a follow, then I don't know what is. I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description of the video as well. And I have to say thank you to my wife Amy and Mr. X's partner Claudine for their donations and their permissions. Amy not only looked after John Wood Jr., but also my mum, who had come over for a visit. And thank you also to my ex-partner Gillian. Jill lost her mum to pancreatic cancer when we were together back in 2008, so I know it's a cause that means a lot to her personally. Shout out to Chef Jimmy, who I used to work with, Martin, who I currently work with at the Opera House, Adam Dorney from Melbourne, Jeff O'Neill from Western Australia, and the one and only Ashley Butterworth, plus Gary from Birmingham, who all made donations. And thank you to Andrew and Luke at Time and Tide Australia, who even published an article about us and our efforts. Much appreciated, gentlemen. I felt a little bit famous after that. Just a little bit though. The charming Reuven from Sydney, who loaned me his Tissot telemeter, David Rosenblum, a name that I know from the comments of every single video, Nicolo Sagato, Brandon Devlin, and Meadowvale Campsites at Cooperstown, NY, USA, all made super generous $200+ donations. Okay, hang on to your hats folks. Shout out to Glyn Reynolds of Sherwood Watches, Travis Tan of RZE Watches, Carlos of Borealis Watches, Neil from the Microbrand Store, James of the Watching James channel, John of the John's Watch Joint channel, and Will Duncan of Zaltec Watch Reviews in Scotland, who all donated. Alright, I will try my best with the pronunciations. I'm sure you'll recognise your name, even if I Scotify it a little bit. Robert McKinley, who has a Scottish name anyway, Michael Marukovic, Brandon King, Anthony Hall, Terry Steiner, Daniel Wah, Peter DeLulo, Stephen Walker, Rod Baxter, Douglas Choi, Matthew Scheer, Bill Ziegfried, Matthias Pomeranz, Warren Cooksey, my friend John Raby in San Francisco, Joaquin Carlson, Chris McCalman, Joseph Inendino Jr., Don Zielinski, Tobias Lester, Miles Birchall. You were right, Miles, no W202 has ever broken down. That record remains intact. Andrew Barlow, Corey Rogers from Milwaukee, Shiv Pali, Brad Alperin, Robert North, Richard Pawley, Chris Newman, Addy Susanto, the force was definitely with us, Addy, Tim Dybel, Jerry Sayer, Plexcom Industries, who lost both their parents to cancer and is themselves a survivor, Noel King, Eli T, Joe St. Lawrence, who advised me to put 2 full-size spares in the back seat. Good advice, Joe, but I thought it was safer putting them on the roof. Jason Roche, Darren Payton, Milorad Vrankovic, Sydney local Neil Levine, Jamie Dunford, Brian McIndoe, John Kerrison, Nate Marhar, Greg Richards, David Porter, Paul Goyne, Stephen Verbaist, Phil Toulos, Jeffrey Ball, Simon Neal, Derek Talbot, Ken Carbone, Christopher Hansen, Adrian Buzart, Mark Pawley, George Peter Martyr Scott, Stephen Brown, James Witecha, Scott Murray, Tyler Lundgren, Rod Humphreys, an Aussie living in British Columbia, Rex Chung, Ian Hartman, Mike Gibson, Ryan Payne, Michael Kiefer, Javier Santos, J.R. Seeger, author, Tom Wiggerman, Robert Strader, Reverend Scott, thank you Reverend, Charles Berman, Craig Miskell, David Jones, not the department store owner, Tulio Lacerda, Ben Eddy, Matthew Ross, Brian M, who told us to pack a safety beacon just in case, ye of little faith Brian, Glenn Folsom, Robert Weideman, Declan Crossan, Andrew Merton, Patrick Hartman, Steve Evans, another name that I recognise from the comment section of every single video, Leonid Alenier, I hope I got that right, Peter Steckatree, I hope I got that right as well, John Moynihan, Chris Randall, a man known only as Roscoe, a man known as Razorburn, Anthony Tautu, and Brett Cooper. Don't worry Brett, we did remember the sunscreen. There were also a number of people who left messages I just couldn't not read out, people whose lives have been touched by cancer, perhaps more than others, certainly more than mine. Roger Tromans donated $200 and said he lost his first wife to cancer and has had it twice himself. Thank you Roger, I really appreciate your message and your donation mate. Arnav Prasad donated $150. He said that 6 months ago he was diagnosed with a type of germ cell cancer. He watched a lot of YouTube in hospital and thanks to modern medicine he has made a full recovery. I wish you well Arnav. Neil Gershman, who donated $100 in honour of his brother Eric, who is an oncologist in Las Vegas. Jonathan Gibbs, who just lost a good friend to cancer. Hopefully his $100 will help somebody else in the future not to lose their good friend to cancer. Mark Irvin is just out of hospital from the side effects of chemotherapy. Stay strong, Mark. Toby Mundy is another survivor, now in full remission from the cancer he was diagnosed with in 2019. Mark Gates, who sadly lost his father to lung cancer 5 years ago. Sorry to hear that, Mark, and thank you for your donation. James Beckers, who lost his mother Gladys and made a donation in her memory. Paul Park, Jerome Molliston and Case Payne, who all lost their fathers to cancer. Liam Shower, who donated in memory of his mother-in-law. And finally, Ben Hall, who donated because his sister is having her first child at the moment in between bouts of chemotherapy. That cannot be easy. So thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone who has donated, large or small. Well, you now see why I had to make a separate video, don't you? So many generous people, so much money, so many thank yous. I think 15 of the 30,000 came from individual donations. I think that's everybody. I'm really sorry if for some reason I managed to miss you or more likely hacked up the pronunciation of your name. Now, it wouldn't be practical for me to do the Shipbox Rally every year. In fact, they run them twice a year, but I've definitely got my sights on one of the 2025 editions. Perhaps I'll be asking all of you to give generously again in a couple of years' time. Thanks for watching this video. Back to normal watch-based content tomorrow, I promise. But I will slip in the travelogue of the rally itself next week when I have had time to edit all the footage. Thanks again. All the best.